Hello and welcome to Interviews with the Experts. Today I'm so excited to bring you Vanessa Long, who's an Ayurvedic Wellness Coach for women. So I met Vanessa about a few months ago and we've been sort of going back and forth, and I'm so pleased that we've got round to bringing this interview together. So we're going to be talking about all about Ayurvedic practices and everything that Vanessa does. So that'll be really, really exciting. I know that it's going to really help so many mums that are watching this and so many women who are watching this as well. So Vanessa, hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I know it's taken a little while, isn't it? back and forth, but I'm so glad that we're finally here today, which is brilliant. So I would love to know, because I know a bit about what you do already, which is why I wanted to bring you on, but I've intentionally not asked you too much because I really want to get into the questions today. So are you able to kind of explore, give us kind of like an overview of what you do and then explore, you know, the specific sort of pathways that you take women on as well?
Yeah, so I'm an Ayurvedic wellness coach, and so many people get tripped up on the word Ayurveda. They're like, I don't, Ayurveda, I don't even know how to pronounce it. And all it is, it's a sister science to yoga. And all it means is living in harmony with nature according to our own specific natures. So Ayurveda believes that we are all different. We are all made up of different combinations of the different elements, the 5 elements in the universe. And depending on that, we need to live in different ways. And there are certain cycles of life, seasons in our life that we must adapt to prevent stress and prevent illness and disease buildup and really nurture and take care of ourselves. So I work with women in general. I work with female entrepreneurs, and I work with people who are pregnant. I'm also a specialist doula, so I work in the postpartum as well, and mothers. And it's that whole stage and transition of becoming a mother that is so neglected in the West. The whole acknowledgement that it's such a massive transformation. It's an opportunity for a really deep and profound spiritual transformation. And in the West, that just gets completely sidelined. And it's just like, you're pregnant, if you're lucky, and you have a baby and you get on with it. And for me, it's so sad that women have just been completely neglected, and this honoring of this period of going from a woman to a mother is the biggest spiritual transformation you'll ever make in your life, and we sideline it. We sideline it. We expect women to have babies and just then get up and get on with it, to be back out on the school run or in Asda in a matter of days. They're not allowed that sacred time to heal and rest in that, you know, and Ayurveda believes it has amazing protocols to get women pregnant in the first place, because that's another area in the West that we completely, you know, we just don't understand. We just think we kind of add it to our tick list. You know, it's like, oh, I have the car, I have the house, I have the husband, oh, I'll have a baby now. And we don't actually prepare the body and the mind to be in an optimal position and state of health to have the healthiest offspring. And then all throughout pregnancy, Ayurveda has amazing protocols to nourish the mum and the embryo at certain stages of the pregnancy with different foods and different practices, and then preparing for birth. And then, you know, Ayurveda has 6 weeks postpartum where the new mum is completely relieved of all kind of chores and all other obligations. So the community and families will rally round and take care of her. And her only job is to, recover from 9 months of being pregnant, recover from a birth that might have been quite traumatic or not what she wanted, and get to know and learn to feed her new baby. That's her only job. She's massaged daily, she's bathed, she's taken care of. And that's why women in the West who no longer have these practices, because they were around in the West. And it's like the menstrual cycle and the menstrual huts and the bleeding, that, you know, we were allowed to rest when we menstruated. And we're no longer allowed to do that. We're told to get on with it. And then when we have babies, we're no longer allowed to rest and recover. And that's why we see huge spikes in postnatal depression. You know, huge. It's because women are not given that space, and they don't give themselves that space to fully rest.
I absolutely 100% agree with all the work that I do as well. I think it's so well matched. In fact, I think we need to have another conversation apart from this about something to do with that, because it's like we don't sort of give homage to that transition, do we, in the West? And it's such a huge thing, and to be able to support a woman to embrace that, because when we go into pregnancy and we go into motherhood, we already have these set thoughts and beliefs of how it's going to be, what we're going to feel like, how we're going to function. And of course, we've got massive influence from films, media, other people hiding in shame, so they tell you everything's okay when actually underneath it's probably not. In some areas, the nitty-gritty doesn't tend to get talked about that much.
No.
And there is this kind of blanket of judgment and shame still that goes on. And so therefore we hide more, and therefore we go inward more, and we're not able to express our natural emotions. And then we turn those emotions into, or we don't turn them, but of course the anxiety comes through, and then of course it spirals, and that's when we have sort of big onsets of postnatal depression and things like that. So I'm really interested to know, with your support and with Ayurvedic support and medicine, how would you kind of support a woman through the journey then, pre and postnatally? What would you actually put in place for that?
So if somebody comes to me and say, they're struggling to have a baby, or they just want to be in the optimum position, then, we can put in kind of Ayurvedic practices like a detox program, because that's what really men and women both partners should be doing, is that we should be detoxing the body before we even think about having a baby.
Yeah.
And also we need to be looking at our own constitutions and trying to figure out what is the best time to conceive a baby. Because if you're conceiving a baby when you're both in your heightened state of imbalance, then that's going to produce a weaker offspring even. So we don't even think about these things. We don't even, so someone will come to me and then we'll go through the detox. And it's kind of what I love about Ayurveda is it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's a complete system. So it deals with every aspect of the person. And often when people come and they want to physically detox, it might be that there's also some relationship hurts that have been held on to, and blockages, energetic blockages in the body, and all kinds of things that just need to be released and talked about. And so they go on a journey, and then throughout pregnancy, people will come to me for either coaching or nutritional support. So I coach women, from up to 12 months, from the whole journey from, becoming pregnant to having a baby. But I would often say, in the West, we're so focused on the birth, and it's all about, as a doula, as an doula, I work with people preparing them for birth, and birth is a mindset game. People you need to be physically fit and you need to be physically well, but actually to birth on your terms is a completely mental experience. And I used a combination of hypnobirthing and Ayurvedic warm oil massage. I had 2 home births really quickly, no pain relief whatsoever, other than warm oil Ayurvedic. Because in Ayurveda, we have the stress, we have Vata element, which is the wind, which moves around. So we pacify it with opposites, warm, heavy oil. So warm, heavy food, unctuous food, warm, heavy oil in treatments. And then postnatally, if I was to go in, and I don't do this so much now because my business is too busy, but I normally go in with women and live in, I would live in, or I would visit them daily. So you massage women, women need warm, heavy oil. They need, when they've had a baby, their digestive capacity gets completely extinguished. So we need to reignite it carefully so that we digest our food, and so that baby therefore digests its food, and it doesn't get colic, it doesn't get tummy ache, because all the toxins in us comes out in our breast milk. So all colic and acidity and reflux is all a sign of a disturbed digestion in mum that then gets passed on to baby. And if mum's traumatized from a birth, or if mum's just exhausted and depleted because she's got young kids, her energy is going to be very low or very fractious. And if she's not sleeping well, we need the warm, heavy oil to pacify people's sleep, because often when you have a baby, you're exhausted, but you can't sleep because you're so wired.
Yeah, the cortisol levels are just really high. Yeah.
And then you get into a vicious cycle of they're not sleeping, you're not sleeping, no one's sleeping, and then it becomes more and more and more ungrounded. So we need to really bring in kind of practices, and I do this through coaching as well. We talk about recipes and what to eat, and but really you would go in, you would get somebody to come in, and you would be cooked for, you would be massaged, so that your whole body and your whole energy levels just become grounded and peaceful, and we don't go this woo and kind of frantic energy of going into the mind of becoming so ungrounded and unstable and getting hooked on, you know, negative thoughts that are play around, and we can't stop them. So I work with people, coach, you know, who come to me and are just stuck in this spiral of negativity in their heads. And we look at working on, you know, how they can eat, how they can live, what kind of mantras they can do, what kind of meditation practice, you know, things that just bring women back into the moment. So that all, you know, they're able to let go of what's gone on in pregnancy and birth and just focus in on the now. Because in my own experience, I got very hung up on what happened to me postnatally, which then led me on a spiral of postnatal depression. And it's like, yes, but what you do, you know, and someone came around, I'll never forget, she said, yes, okay, that's happened, but let's look at now. And so often we get so, you know, we live in the past, and then we imagine the future, and we're rarely here. We're rarely here. So it's about bringing women, you know, back into, right, these are the foods you should be eating. You really shouldn't be surviving on rice crackers and fruit and all these light, airy things that are going to destabilize you even more. These are the foods you should be eating. This is how you should be doing. And it's almost about giving women permission to stop. Look, the house it's chaos. You know, it's carnage when you have a new baby. That's just how it is. Unless you've got an army of family coming in. But unfortunately, at the moment, nobody has an army of help coming in. So women are isolated and alone, often with screaming babies by themselves in their sleep. And it's about just giving them permission to just let go and go, just sit down, look at your baby, watch some trash TV, have a sleep. But you don't need to have this done. You don't need to have that done. Are you, you know, and I often remind women, have you got a roof over your head? Yes. Are you warm? Yes. Have you got enough to buy food? Yes. You're doing well. That's enough. That's
honestly,
it.
Everything that you've just said there is I'm just ringing true with all of that stuff. So when I fell pregnant, it was a bit of an accident, a happy one. But I'd personally been on a 9-month detox because I had all kinds of gut issues. So in my personal life, I'd cut out loads of types of foods. I'd cut out alcohol. I was in caffeine, and you know, I was doing loads of like hot ginger drinks, and I was really high on nutrition. So I saw a nutritional therapist, I saw a herbalist. I used to go for like loads of colonics to kind of really instill, and then I'd reprogram my gut kind of with tons of probiotics. So I was on this huge 9-month program, and actually it felt really easy for me to get pregnant. I was probably at a prime space because I was so healthy in my body and in my mind, and in my energy, and we were so happy and we were so grounded, and we were just in that right kind of space. So I'm not surprised I got pregnant so quickly and so easily, because I think, you know, I'd been on this huge grounding experience for almost a year. So that was really interesting to say when you talked about the detox thing, because that was exactly kind of, maybe I'd kind of been prepping for that. I'm not entirely sure. But then hearing you talk about how to prepare a woman pre-birth and postnatally, that just makes me feel, I feel like I want to cry, but also just want to, I feel this hot, like warm, fuzzy feeling of, this is exactly what we need. This is exactly what mums need. Why is this not the norm in our culture? And I know it is the norm in some cultures. And it's almost like the most amazing gift that you're able to give a woman is gifting her that permission to stop. It's gifting her that self-care, that nourishment, and helping her to readjust ever so slightly, because it's a wild experience when you've had a baby. And gosh, I just think I wish I'd had you at that time, and I wish I'd known that such a thing existed, because actually so many of us don't know that this even exists. It's not even an accessible sort of therapy that we know about, you know.
No, and it's about, you know, I suppose my whole job is I have my own family, I have my own business to run. I can't go off around the country helping women. I don't have the time to do that. But my job, you know, through my pregnancy programs, you know, my birthing with presence programs, is about, you know, half of the program is about the postpartum bit, because it's so neglected. You know, everyone is focused on the birth. Everyone is obsessed. And if you look at your mothering journey from the minute you decided to have a baby or got pregnant, and then the first year, which is the hardest year, you know, people say, oh, yeah, postnatally, yeah, the first 6. It's not. It's the first year. The
Yeah.
first year is tough. You know, it's the first, especially if it's your first, it's the first of everything, you know, teething, weaning, sleeping. You don't know what the hell you're doing. No one gives you a manual, you know, and we've lost this connection to ourselves. And, you know, women will go on, you know, massive, like, they'll go on every single pregnancy forum, looking for answers. And all they really want is for someone to say, this is how you do it. And they're like, I know. And so we're looking for someone to reaffirm what we already know. And my work is about reaffirming to women that you already have the answers. You already know. It's about giving yourself permission. And really, you know, my whole business is about nurturing women, because when women are nurtured, then we can thrive.
Yes.
But if we are neglected and abused, and how things work often, especially in somewhere like the States where they don't even have paid maternity leave, it's abuse. It's abuse to women. It's abuse to babies. And it's only when women go, we are not doing this anymore. You cannot do this to us anymore, that things are going to change. But it starts with re-educating people and going, this is not right. You are suffering because you are living completely, you know, out of harmony with how you should be living. Even just going back to, I remember when, you know, the menstrual cycle, I cried when, have you ever read the book, The Red Tent by Anita Diamond, I think?
I've not, but I know about it. Yeah. And I know red tents that have popped up all over the UK.
I could have cried reading that book because, you know, what women used to be allowed to do, and all our, you know, pregnancy health is very much related to our menstrual cycle and our menstrual health. You know, women were allowed to, you know, go off into the red tent, the bleeding hut, for the first 2 or 3 days and connect with other women. They would come, you know, they would have their cycles in sync. They would be relieved of all chores, and they would be allowed to rest. And why we can't, you know, the reason we have all these, you know, premenstrual symptoms and all these horrendous things, because we are not living our lives in harmony with our cycles.
We're not allowed to rest. We're not promoted to rest. Are we? We're not encouraged to do so. And interestingly as well, I used to actually take time off. So in my old work, and I had a talk with one of my bosses once, and I used to have a really bad time with that. So we came to an arrangement that when that happened, I would just take 1 to 2 days off, just no question about it, because I couldn't function at work. No. I couldn't write assessments. I couldn't go and see anybody. I definitely couldn't drive. It wasn't safe for me to drive because it was so bad. So luckily, she was incredibly understanding, and she said, well, why don't you just take some time off then? If you know your cycle, you know it like clockwork, book your time off. Yeah. And I was like, wow, and I did, and that's how it worked. I took 2 days off, unless it was a week before.
And how many women have got the luxury of that?
Oh, like none. Every time I've told that story to anyone, they cannot believe that actually happened. And that was through an incredibly supportive manager, I've got to say. But that should be, I think, a given. Yeah. To how we offer, and it definitely, you know, in the States, I've got loads of friends over in the States, and they just say how bad it is for postnatal support. You know, they're supposed to go back to work 2 weeks after their baby's born.
Full time, not even part time.
No, not even part time, full time, and sometimes it's less. Sometimes it's like a week.
Oh, 3 days. I know a woman who had to go back after 3 days full time because her birth was complicated and her insurance, she couldn't afford. Her insurance didn't cover it. And so, I mean, that is abuse to women, and it's abuse to these babies who are having to be put in daycare centers. I mean, at 3-4 days old, when our babies need us for 2 years. For the first 2 years, even in countries like Romania and Estonia, and they have 2 to 3 years paid maternity leave, you know, 80% if they've you know, worked and paid their taxes. That's the bare minimum that they get, you know. And 9 months for us, it's not enough. I mean, thankfully, you know, I was self-employed and I was watching all my friends go back to work, and I felt like the odd one out. I felt like I'm not doing that. And I started some part-time work where my son was about 18 months old, and then I was seeing clients at maybe 3-4 months old with my daughter, and I didn't feel ready to do it, but I just did it as and when I could do it, and it felt okay, and it kind of was good for me as well. But I could have gone back to full-time work or even part-time work at 9 months. They were babies. They need it. You know, that's what Ayurveda promotes. They need to be with a single caregiver for the first 2 years of their life. And we need a system that goes back to supporting us to do that. You know, my mum said, you know, when I speak to my mum and their generation, she's in her 70s now, and she said, you know, when we all went off to have our babies, you know, in the 70s, she said what would happen is we'd leave work, and then, you know, college leavers would come and replace us. Then they'd be trained up, and then by the time we went back to work, they'd be off having babies, and there was just this natural flow and cycle of you know, women going off work, and then, you know, and so why can't that, you know, there's no reason that shouldn't be happening other than we're not demanding that it does.
Sort of stuck in a loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody on the line.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about this pregnancy program that you offer. So you're able to explore what that is, and how you kind of offer support to people on a wider net. So I know that you won't have all the time to visit everyone all over the UK. No. Everyone probably needs you. How do you support women sort of online and accessibly?
Yeah, so I have a coaching program which is called Birthing with Presence, and it's generally a 6 to 8 week kind of program depending on what people do with me. And it's about when women are pregnant, it's about going through. So we look at pregnancy lifestyle and self-care and pregnancy nutrition. We look at preparing for birth. So we look at all the mental and emotional and physical, you know, elements of how we prepare for birth in order to birth on our terms. And it might not be that women get the births they want, but if they feel in control and safe and heard and listened to, then they can make informed decisions at every point in their births. And, you know, 3 to 4 modules of the program is actually the postnatal bit. It's postpartum nutrition, it's postpartum lifestyle and self-care, and it's about caring for you and baby for the first 6 months. So it's about incorporating all things, you know, such as, you know, baby massage. I mean, Ayurveda is, you know, warm oil massage is a huge therapeutic element for mothers and babies. So it's a complete kind of system and program that I run kind of every 3 to 4 months. You know, people can come and access me one-to-one at any point, but as a group, then I run it every 3 to 4 months. And it's about really kind of, for me, it's called Birthing with Presence because women need to be more present.
Sorry.
More present. Because when you're present, there's no problems. When you're present, there's no fear. When you're present, there's nothing to worry about. There's just what is.
We're not here or there, are we? We're not anxious about this. We're not worried about that. We're not going over what happened over here. We're just in this. Completely agree. Completely agree. The power of doing that. And do you know, it's not always easy to do that. And I've been speaking to someone today as well about taking time out, but actually switching off, like learning how to switch off especially when you're a mum, is almost like a new skill within itself. But the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. And then what you'll find is that you're naturally able to be like that. So for instance, with all the practices that you teach and that you provide, you're going to enable that woman to feel that instant benefit from it. But also the more she does this, the more that'll start to become eventually her natural way of being. You stop sort of trying to be present, you stop trying to relax, you stop trying to aim to be calm, you just are. And it's an amazing space to be in. But you don't get to that place unless you started somewhere. So you have to start somewhere and practice it. And then within time, it then becomes your norm. And it's a wonderful feeling.
But it is our natural state. You know, what's happened is that in the West, we are trained to constantly go with our minds. So we are not taught to, you know, we can have a completely frantic and agitated mind, but we don't have to identify with it. We don't have to follow it. We don't have to go with its fears and its projections and its worries. It can be having all those. You're never going to stop thinking. You know, this is the skill, you know, people need to learn, you know, that you're never going to stop thinking. You might have moments of a very peaceful mind, but just because you have a busy mind, it doesn't mean to say you're not present. There's a real difference in recognizing that whatever is going on, whether it's outer disturbance and agitation, you can still be peaceful. You can still be fully present to it.
Yeah, you can choose to do that, and choose to behave from a place once you've been aware of that as well, of going, this is happening. The more we push that away, that's the other thing, is that the more you try and push the anxieties and worries away, that the stronger they become. It's about kind of recognizing them and even labeling them and saying, thank you for being here and keeping my brain safe. I'm going to decide not to take you on today. you know,
Yeah.
and it's about your mindset of how you then deal with that. And I deal with that a lot with the anxious thoughts that come in. When you have that thought that comes in, you have a choice to let that affect how you're further going to behave, or you can recognize it, accept it for what it is, even thank it, you know, for being there to help you on your journey, but decide that you're not going to allow it to dictate on how you're then going to behave. I think it's wonderful. I think what you do is absolutely amazing. I want to talk to you more about all of this, and I know that we're going to get together as well for another conversation later on down the line next year, which is going to be absolutely brilliant. So that will go more into detail, and we'll probably I'm sure we'll veer off into loads of different pathways, which will just be amazing. So for everybody that's watching, we will have all of your links down below, so please do go and say hello to Vanessa, go and have a look at her program if you think it's right for you, and please share it with a friend if this isn't where you're at particularly, but you've got friends or family that are going through pregnancy, birth, or you want to just talk to Vanessa about anything that we've talked about, then please do pop onto the links. Vanessa, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I've loved it.
Wonderful. Take good care, and we'll definitely see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.